Behind me here sits the first UK-built 992 GT3 RS MR. Bit of a mouthful, but what a machine. This is actually the 16th MR built car that we've put together in total, which I believe means that we've put together more than anyone else on the planet outside of Manthey themselves. Since then, we've done over 100 track days supporting, setting up and even driving our own MR across UK and Europe. And we're thrilled to put this car together. So I'm going to show you some of the behind the scenes, what goes into the build, the specific components themselves. So let's rewind a little bit and we'll go through all those now. Right, so before we get into some of the new parts of this particular build, I'm going to talk you through the standard bits that come as part of the Manthey kit. So obviously, first thing you'll notice when you open the door, you've got these beautiful dry carbon entry guards which illuminate with the Manthey sign. You've got little puddle lights, so when you open the door, it illuminates Manthey onto the floor. Obviously, got the obligatory racy tow eye from Manthey, tow eye hook. This car in particular will also be fitting upgraded brake pads, so obviously in the extreme that's going to give the driver a more precise pedal feel, and teamed in with that we fit braided brake lines. So what these will stop is with rubber it can expand sometimes and give a spongy brake pedal feel, and this will make it nice and crisp and hard. And then finally we upgrade also the brake fluid on it, so it can withstand higher temperatures to keep that pedal consistent throughout. Right, let's get into the slippery business of aerodynamics. This car creates, at its peak, 1,000 kilos of downforce. That's up from 860 kilos of the standard car, which wasn't particularly lacking anyway. So how does it do that? Let's go through each component and I'll show you what's what. Right, let's start at the front of the car and we'll work our way to the back. So on the front end, we've got a new front splitter. It's 50mm longer than the one previously. It's also got two carbon tethers which then bolt back into the car, which allow some flex. So if you do hit a curb, they're not going to snap, they bounce back the other way. We've also got new side plates which click on to the end of your splitter, which also increase downforce but not drag. And then finally, rounding out everything from the front end, we've got the super distinctive front canards, which incidentally, people are always a bit dismissive of, but as I say to them, stick your hand outside the window at 100 miles an hour, that is doing something. And then underneath the front section of the car, we've got this flat under tray, and what that's doing is smoothing out the airflow as it travels down the middle of the car. Presenting like this, I feel like a bit of a butcher or something, but they are prime cuts of pork. Anyway, onwards with the bits and bobs. So we've got side end plates. These are absolutely ridiculous. I've never seen a road car with ones this big, but what they're basically doing is keeping the high pressure inside the rear wing and creating more downforce on the rear wing itself. So we're actually changing one of the rear wing blades. This is actually a singular piece on the standard car. On the Manthey conversion, they actually split it into two. So whilst I'm obviously no aerodynamicist, apparently what that does is by disrupting the airflow, it actually creates more downward pressure on the rear wing for extra grip. We've also got the iconic rear wheel aero discs. And what these are actually doing is smoothing out the airflow as it comes down the side of the car so that the rear wing can obviously create more downforce, but also what this is doing, all of these bits and pieces haven't changed the drag coefficient of the car. And in layman's terms, that's what it means by it's slipperier through the air, but it's creating more downforce, and it doesn't actually affect the fuel economy of the car. Pretty remarkable. Right, if you're still with me, onto the roof of the car. So a standard GT2 RS already has what they call roof strakes, which direct air across the top of it. It was found in wind tunnel testing that as the hot air comes out of the front radiator on the front of the car, that air was actually going back into the engine. So these air guides redirect that airflow as it comes out the back of it. And the most iconic piece of this whole car is obviously that big shark fin on the back of the car. It looks badass, but it's actually doing something. It creates better stability in a straight line whilst also guiding the air onto the massive rear wing. And finally, we've got the diffuser. So effectively what the diffuser's job is to suck the car onto the floor. So we've got the wing on the top pushing it down and this big diffuser on the bottom pulling it down even further. So we've got far bigger, what we call vanes on the bottom of it compared to the standard car. But also there's two little kinks in the diffuser. And again, no aerodynamicist, but what that's doing is it's making the airflow more aggressive as it comes up underneath the car and therefore pulling it down. We've also got these standard little intakes on the bottom, which actually just send a bit of air up into the bottom of the car to keep the engine cool. But what a work of art. Although this is obviously built by Manthey, it's built to OEM quality, so therefore it has to go through all the same tests and procedures that a standard Porsche part would do. And likewise, when the boys come to fit these things, there's no messing around with fixing holes. They bolt exactly in where the old one came out. So when Manthey said that they were going to do an MR kit for the 992 RS, I was quite intrigued because the standard 992 GT3 RS, you can adjust a lot of the suspension from the steering wheel. So I thought, how is that going to work in conjunction with the coilover kit? Well, obviously they've done it and it works. What we've basically got here is bump and rebound adjustment, just like on the standard car, but with a stiffer platform. And we need that stiffer platform because of the amount of downforce that the car is creating, it's going to need to support the car. So the new box of tricks, the ECU that controls all of this, runs at 1000 megahertz, so it's taking 1000 data points per second in order to adjust this suspension whilst the car's moving. So you can still use it whilst you're on the go. And the other amazing thing is all this is still covered by the manufacturer warranty. The attention to detail throughout this build, as you've probably picked up, is incredible, but there's even small things which no one's ever going to mention, but I will. Down here we've got a little bracket and it's got laser etched into it, Manthey's logo. No one's going to see it, but it's really cool that it's there. Anyway, there's a few people behind the camera waiting for me to shut up and build this car. Let's let them get on with it. Right, so with the power of TV, we can see that Ricky's already got things going on here. Rick, I know you've built dozens of these things before, but what's different about how you put in the suspension in this car?
So to start off with this car, you get a different ECU,
yep.
Which now the suspension is electronically
controlled,
as you've still got the dials on the steering wheel you can use.
Yep.
You have the wiring harness, which then plugs onto the suspension at the bottom.
Yep.
It goes on from there.
You better make sure the right plug is on the right corner. Right, so I can see you've got the instructions on the PWIS computer there. I'm not going to give all your secrets away, but there's some different things that you do that aren't in the instructions. For the viewers, what's this all about?
No, just for protection.
Yep.
Stops any damages to paintwork. It is purely for protection.
And you cover these cars with it. Where else do you usually put it?
All over. Anywhere we're working. Door shuts,
yep.
Interior parts. Yeah.
And there's that small attention to detail, which is why people always like getting their car set up by you, isn't it?
Yeah,
but, so once these suspensions are all in there, what's the next step?
So next we can do braided lines.
Yep.
Manthey pads.
Okay, yep.
Racing fluid, because this guy's going to be using it on the circuit.
Yep.
Front bumper will be coming off for the aero parts.
Okay, yep.
Rear wing.
Yep.
Obviously aero parts there.
Good job, you know what you're doing. And then once that's done, suspension setup, is that the final part that you do?
Yes, final part, and then at the very end we need to measure the front lip height, and road test.
Away she goes. Right, so there's not many standard parts of the aerodynamics of a 992 GT3 RS that could be described as weedy, but when you compare the standard rear diffuser to what we're about to fit, it does pale into significance. Anyway, Rick, just quick whilst you're about to fit it, what's different on this one and why?
So these are different brackets.
Yep.
The reason for these are the diffuser is a lot longer,
yep.
It's a lot wider. Obviously you've got the extra fins as well, and it's there to secure it.
And I guess given that this is taking a hell of a lot of forces, these things are going to be pretty beefy, are they?
Yes, yeah, these are solid. They're not going anywhere.
Good. Right, I've seen Ricky do all sorts of things to cars over the years, but I've not seen you do this, Rick. What are you up to?
At the moment, we are carrying out a laser alignment on the rear shark fin.
Okay.
To make sure it is dead centre.
Okay.
So first of all, we'll do the alignment on the car, make sure the car's completely flat.
Chassis is correct,
and
yeah.
we also need to align the front splitter.
Okay. Aligning front splitters, this is a new one. Why do we do that?
We laser align for the correct clearance of the height.
It's all about precision.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to leave you to it. When it's back on its toes, let's go and see what it's like. So here we have the final article. The word Batmobile keeps cropping up when everyone looks at this car, but the first thing that strikes you is all of the fit and finish is exactly like these cars leave the production line. So for an aftermarket component that's fitted to the car, that is very rare. So obviously on the front end, we've got the splitter as we've been talking about earlier with the flicks, and then the extra winglets that come off the side of that. Up onto the roof, we've got the aero blades that feed the rear shark fin, and then inside we've got the beautiful Manthey dry carbon entry guards, which look awesome, and obviously the puddle lights, which Sam will get a bit of B-roll in a second. The iconic rear wheel discs, which everyone tends to love as well. Obviously changed design very slightly from the 991.2 generation, so they've got more of a flat finish, which finishes flush with the centre cap, which looks brilliant. The rear end plates, just to give us some context of size, look how big that is compared to a Coke can, is absolutely ginormous. And obviously we've got the split rear wing. And then finally, when we come down to the back of the car, I just love how mean this splitter looks. We've got these little drill holes to save that tiny little bit of extra weight. And this particular car has also had an Aquapovic exhaust upgrade as well. So it's absolutely awesome. Let's go and see what it's like on the road. That was fun. Right, I'm not going to start reeling off a load of rubbish about how you can feel, this, that and the other of this car on the road. You can't. This is the ultimate track car and you need the circuit to experience that. What I can tell you though is how supple this is on the roads. I mean, UK tarmac is obviously terrible, but it works. And if you compare this to say like a 996, 997 GT3 RS, you wouldn't, but you could daily this sort of car, which is remarkable. And that's testament to how sophisticated dampers are, the valving inside them. We keep telling people how well they manage these cars on the road. So a coilover doesn't always necessarily mean the car's got to be rock hard. It works with the road surface. Aside from that, this is the ultimate track car built by Porsche, built to set the ultimate lap times. And when you start looking at it from that context, it starts to make a lot of sense. So if we take the Nürburgring, the hallowed place, the lap record around there in an AMG 1 is something around 6 minutes 30. AMG 1s are about 3 million quid. They require a hell of a lot of maintenance and I think regular engine rebuilds. This car can be had for a tenth of that cost. Maybe just a bit over 10th of that cost. But it will probably dip into the 630s. It'll have a 2-year, 12,000 mile service interval. You could drive it to the track, you can drive it back. And taken in that measure, this thing's awesome. If you've got the minerals to buy one of these and to do this, why wouldn't you? You only live once, get on with it.